You are in. You are in the Zoom meeting now.
Should I be hearing some audio?
No, unless we want to test your audio at your location, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So I'll go ahead and mute now. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You are in the Zoom meeting now.
Seal, Bridget, Christopher, Edmund, Is. Renata, Noe,
You are the only participant in the conference.
Good morning to everyone. We're still waiting just a couple of minutes on TEA, but before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping reminders. Number one, especially for those out in our districts and remote sites, everyone needs to keep their microphones muted this morning. The only people that will need to turn on their mic today will be TEA and the ESCs. Also, please check your cell phones and turn them off, or if you can't turn them off, please put them on silent and keep them far away from your microphone. Those cell phone signals communicating with the data tower will cause static in the conference. Thank you so much. I appreciate your help with those two items, and I hope you have a great session. Thank you.
Good morning. Please give a thumbs up if you can hear us. Oh, I see some thumbs up. Fantastic. Happy cold. It's very cold here in Austin this morning. We had another freezing night, so good morning to each and every one of you across the state. We're happy to have you here today. My name is Dr. Barbara Kennedy. I'm the Director of English Learner Support. We have a nice packed agenda for a couple of hours. We're very excited to have you all here. We're going to be presenting a variety of information. I believe you all received the agenda that we had previously up on the screen, and you should have received also via email. So we'll be following that agenda today, and we will reserve time at the end for questions. So please jot down your questions as we go. We'll try to pause as we go for questions, but in order to make sure we get through all the content, we may have to save some of your questions until the end. Also for ESCs who are here today, at the end, we anticipate finishing today at about 10 to 11 as we have a conflicting meeting elsewhere at 11 o'clock sharp. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our new team member, our newest team member. We're very, very excited to have Amy Barra Johnson with us here as our new bilingual program coordinator. Learner Support Division at the TEA. She started last week, and we are very, very excited to have her with us. And we're going to let her introduce herself, and then we'll also have our other team members introduce themselves today, just in case some of you haven't had the opportunity to meet with us yet. So with no further ado, Amy Johnson, our new bilingual coordinator.
Good morning, everyone. It's interesting to be here on the other side of the TETN, but I'm glad to be here and to be stepping into this new role. I've been a bilingual teacher in Texas in both transitional programs and two-way dual language programs in Alief ISD, right outside Houston, and then most recently in Leander ISD. And I am really excited to learn about programs all around the state and help support you all in making those programs as good as they can be. Y así que he sido maestra bilingüe, claro, hablo español y puedo comunicar muy bien con ustedes en español. So there you go. And that's it. That's me. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Carlene Thomas, the ESL Program Coordinator. Happy to be here. Just celebrated my 1-year anniversary at the TEA, and just happy to have all of you here today.
All right. Good morning. My name is Ricky Santillana. I am the Title III Coordinator, taking care of the federal side for services and benefits for English learners.
And you might notice there is a missing face this morning. Roberto Manso is unfortunately out sick today. I'm sure you all can relate. There's quite a few different bugs circulating around here at the TEA, and unfortunately he succumbed to one of those. So he sends his greetings to all of you and his regrets for missing the meeting today. But I will be sharing the information he was anticipating to share on exceptions and waivers in just a few minutes. So as you'll notice on our agenda, we're ready to start with assessment updates. We have guest speakers who will introduce themselves as we do a little changing of the guards here. So thanks for your patience as we switch our seats and get going with assessment topics.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Esmeralda Cavazos, and I am the manager for TELPAS and TELPAS Alternate. And also we have some language accessibility team members under our team as well. And I'll let Lois go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good to be here sharing information with you again. I'm Lois Neumeyer. I work with TELPAS, TELPAS Alternate, LPAC, and I'm in student assessment under Esmeralda Cavazos.
So welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. We just have a few updates to share with you. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. We have had the TELPAS alternate proficiency level descriptors have now been posted. I know that that was something that districts were needing, and we apologize for the time that it took to get them posted. We have kind of a very long approval process internally, and so it took a while for them to get posted, and so they are posted now. For those of you who are not familiar with TELPAS alternate, we have developed alternate PLDs for this special assessment. Just like for the general TELPAS, that we have TELPAS alternate PLDs for listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And so those have been posted. You know, as you look at these alternate proficiency level descriptors, I just want to point out that there is a footnote on the writing one. And so, you know, really the writing one has to do with for students that are using augmentative or alternative communication devices to express communication. So I just want to point that out. One of the things I'm going to go ahead and mention right now is that we are having upcoming webinars. There was a communication that was sent out on January the 14th to district testing coordinators and regional testing coordinators. And we are going to be having a TELPAS alternate webinar on February the 1st. There's going to be one at 9:30 and one at 1:30. They are the same content on both webinars. There isn't anything different on either one of them. So for those of you who are going to be test administrators for TELPAS Alternate, we highly recommend that you go to the attend at least one of those webinars. If you are unable to attend, they will be posted at the Pearson Access Next on Avocet. And so just wanted to mention that we are having some additional webinars that are coming up.
Right, in that communication that went out, I just want to add that the links that you click to register are in that communication. So if you don't have that communication and you're wanting to register, just contact your DTC.
That's a good point. So Lois is going to talk to you a little bit about the TELPAS alternate resources that we now have available.
Okay, yeah, I am. We've got that site pulled up. I hope you can see it. Just wanted to let you know that we've been really, really busy this fall. I think when we first posted this site, there were like 3 documents on there, and Carly will scroll down. You can see now right here we've got the blueprints, the proficiency levels are all there, the new levels. The resources are your documentation forms that you might need when you're establishing participation eligibility, if there's NAR or your NAR, your medical exception. We have those documents up. We still are waiting on final approval for the Spanish version of the NAR and the medical exception. Then there's the instructional resources. These are the observable behaviors that test administrators, classroom teachers can use during the course of the year as they make observations and prepare themselves for rating the observable behaviors during the testing window. And then there are the training resources. We're really proud of these training resources that we have out there for everyone to use if you're participating in any manner whatsoever. These are broken down for administrators, for accessibility, for student eligibility, and then there are domain-specific training PowerPoints. Short PowerPoints, 15 to 20 minutes long. You can view them on your break time, at lunch, at home. Gives you a lot of really good information about this new assessment that's going live this year. Then we do have some parent resources. Oh, I do want to point out one thing on these training resources. You'll notice that underneath the resources is another link, TELPAS Alternate Observable Behaviors, down below, right there. We made all the training PowerPoints accessible. They're 508 compliant. But because of all the information in the domain PowerPoints, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, they became too heavy. So this is the accessible version of the observable behaviors and classroom examples that are in each of those separate PowerPoints. So if you're needing to use an accessible version, you can click on the PowerPoint, but you'll also need this extra document right here.
And before we move on from the training resources, we have gotten calls about whether teachers that are administering this test have to calibrate like they do for general TELPAS,
yes.
And they don't. The training that these test administrators have to do are the same administrative test training that others get, when you sign the oath, when you know about security, so that's part of the main training. These training PowerPoints are not required, but they're highly recommended. This is a new assessment. We want teachers to be familiar with this assessment, especially since, we're talking about a specific student population. And so like Lois said, there's classroom examples, there's scenarios in each of these language domain PowerPoints. So those are helpful. So we highly recommend them. They're not required. And no, teachers do not have to calibrate. We get that call.
Right,
Several have gotten
do
the
not have to
specific call.
calibrate.
So, but the webinar would also would be a good resource. Like I said, if you are unable to attend participate in the webinar, that will be posted in the Avocet.
Right, and I just want to add, besides, they don't have to calibrate. Your test administrators don't have to calibrate, but they do have to be trained in administrative processes and procedures.
Right.
There is a required training component, but there's not a calibration component.
And that's the same administration procedures training that anybody who does assessments gets. Okay.
All right, then just below that, we do have a parent brochure. both in English and in Spanish. If you're needing to explain, this is very helpful for parents. It's very parent friendly, and it has lots of good images. And then just additional resources at the bottom. We just kind of wanted to just kind of highlight our TELPAS alternate resources webpage.
Okay. All right. Do you want me to jump in about the rest of it? Okay.
Yes.
So, and let's take a look again. I want to show you this right here then is what they were just referring to as, here are the TELPAS alternate proficiency level descriptors that they're right here under those blueprints and PLDs category. And so because of the timing of the release of the TELPAS alternate PLDs, many of our districts have already begun at the beginning of this school year, as you should, begun what we call the special process, or the process for considering reclassification for English learners with special needs. Many of you are familiar with this process for students who qualify for STAR Alternate 2 or for TELPAS Alt. So I just want to take you to some updates as it relates to that. First of all, if you did begin the process at the beginning of the school year to set alternate reclassification criteria for those who meet eligibility, and I'll show you those resources now if you're not familiar. If you begun that process at the beginning of the year, and now with the release of the TELPAS alternate PLDs, the ARD and LPAC may need to go back to amend that ARD LPAC decision to adjust the criteria. If you had utilized the regular TELPAS PLDs, you may need to go back and amend with the ARD and LPAC to utilize the TELPAS alternate PLDs. And so now I want to show you some of the resources that we have updated to hopefully assist you with that process for this school year. So I am now on our bilingual and ESL programs webpage for TEA. And if you scroll down under documents, right here, this has been updated as of yesterday afternoon, the process for considering reclassification. So I'll just open that so you can take a look. Really, the main changes, small adjustments, were made in steps 3 and 4. So in step 3, you'll just notice a little verbiage change here to clarify the academic content assessment needs for grades 1 and 2. And then down under the portion for English language proficiency assessments for grades 1 to 12, you'll notice some new distinctions. We made it clear here that in grade 1, the only option currently is for those students to take TELPAS. There is not a TELPAS alternate for kinder or first. Now, the reason kinder is not mentioned here is because we cannot reclassify students prior to first grade. Now, some of that reasoning and that rationale, as you may have seen in some of the other materials provided by the Assessment Division and others regarding TELPAS alternate, based on the feedback from stakeholders, the rationale for not having TELPAS alternate at KN1 is really because that feedback from the stakeholders mentioning that the holistic ratings at those levels were most appropriate, and that typically kinder and first grade students may not yet fully be identified as having significant cognitive disabilities, and not wanting to underestimate that child's potential at such an early age. So based on that input from stakeholders in the field during the pilot, the TELPAS alternate pilot, it was determined that for K and 1, TELPAS holistic ratings would continue to be utilized. So for our special reclassification process, TELPAS is the only option for the English language proficiency assessment, or also for this current school year, districts can also choose to utilize for the listening and speaking categories, an OLPT, oral language proficiency test from the list of approved tests for this current school year, or for the reading and writing components and an appropriate state-approved English reference assessment in those categories. You'll notice now a distinction between second grade and then 3 through 12. We wanted to make it clear that currently, again, for second grade, you may have students who are taking the general TELPAS assessment or TELPAS alternate. Now, because again of the timing and the guidance, the timing of the guidance from our department as well for this current school year, many of you in the field may have already set reclassification criteria for students in grade 2 who are taking general TELPAS and not TELPAS alternate. So for this current school year, it would be appropriate to adjust those as the ARD and LPAC decision. Moving forward, we will give more detailed and robust guidance for the 1920 school year and beyond as it relates to the setting that special reclassification process for students in grade 1 and 2 specifically. Grades 3 through 12, to qualify for even being eligible for the special reclassification process, the students would need to be eligible for STAR alternate 2 and in turn TELPAS alternate. So those are some clarifications there. And I just want to briefly show you a mock-up of this document is framework page. It's just the form, the suggested you can utilize for this process. Again, I want to, your ARDs and LPACs have met already at the beginning of the school year to begin this process as it states in step 1 that it must be done at or near the beginning of the school year. You may go back to amend the levels using the TELPAS alternate PLDs as necessary. However, at this point in the school year, it is too late for an ARD and LPAC to begin the process of determining a child's need for the setting the special reclassification criteria for this current school year. Those decisions can be made at the end of this school year for 1920 school year implementation. I want to just show you this. This will be posted probably by tomorrow on the LPAC framework website, but I just want to show you a mock-up of how this would look. Many of you in the field, because this is a suggested form, many already adjusted the form as appropriate to add in areas for STAR alternate 2. So down in step 3 on page 3 and 4, you'll see some adjustments where we have added for grade 2 a section where you can mark the TELPAS PLDs or TELPAS alternate PLDs, and then also adjusted the PLD here for labels for grades 3 through 12. You will find that also in step 6, which is for the end of the school year, you will see an adjustment in how that is laid out. Again, grade 1, grade 2, and then grades 3 through 12. Lastly, I want to highlight in step 3 a very important piece to mention about grades 1 and 2. And I will read this statement. Caution should be exercised when considering reclassification of students in grades 1 and 2. It may be premature in these grades to consider reclassification due to developmental factors related to emergent language and literacy. Additionally, in early grades, it is often difficult to know the effect of the student's disability on long-term prospects for a second language. So again, are you able to provide the reclassification process here to reclassify students in grade 1 and 2? Yes, but caution should be utilized specifically in these grade levels.
All right, so the next thing that is the STAR participation and TELPAS participation forms. So just to give you a little bit of background on this. So the STAR participation forms has always been available. And we had gotten some feedback from the field talking about they're wanting some kind of form to document TELPAS participation. What kind of, are there going to be an ARD decision on it? Are they, and so we went ahead and developed that. We developed the TELPAS participation form. And then we started getting the questions about, because we also have our LPAC guidance document for TELPAS, and then we're talking about the assessment part of this. And you know, when we look at those documents, that we just update those every year. The LPAC decision-making guide for TELPAS, the language was the same. There really wasn't any changes other than updates to the document itself. In there, it says how, you know, that you have to document or have some information for your English learners in regards to how they're going to participate in TELPAS. Now, that language had always been there, but I think it kind of just stood out this year because now we had this new form that said TELPAS participation form. So we started getting calls about, well, does that mean that we have to fill out a form for every English learner? Well, you know, any of our forms are just suggested forms, you know, and so if you have to document somehow at the district level as to what, you know, what assessments these students are participating, whether it's with STAR, you know, you're noting what kind of designated supports they have, whether it's TELPAS, now with this new assessment for TELPAS alternate, documenting if they're taking TELPAS, TELPAS alternate. And so that language had always been there, but I guess because we developed this new form, and this was based on feedback, people wanting this form, we developed it, then that line about, well, documenting what, for TELPAS kind of stood out. That language had always been there. Again, these are, recommended forms, or they're optional. They're not something that's required, but it's up to the district how they want to document that. So I just kind of wanted to touch base about that. Really, and the language that's in the guidance document is this: for each EL, the LPAC must maintain documentation of TELPAS and TELPAS alternate participation and the decision to provide TELPAS designated support in the student's permanent record file. So however you want to document that, you can use the forms that we develop or not, but it's important that you do that for students. The next thing that we I kind of mentioned, the STAR decision-making guide also has that language about how they're going to participate with STAR. So when you're meeting with, talking about an English learner and you're trying to determine whether you're working with another committee or it's the LPAC that's recommending it, that has to be documented, what designated supports they're going to do. That has always been done for STAR, and that's the same thing that should be done for TELPAS as well.
And I did just pull up here the website so that you can see where these resources are available that Esmeralda is speaking about on the LPAC resources web page. You can see where these training materials for LPAC decision making, the guides, and then also those forms
are right there as well. Mm-hmm. Right. So now Lois is going to talk a little bit about the STAR designated supports.
Yeah, and this is going to piggyback a little bit on what Carly was talking about, because when you are considering reclassification, this is just a reminder that students for whom the LPAC recommends, and let me stress that it's for the LPAC recommends the use of these supports. There are 3 separate supports. I'm going to go over those in a minute. But if the LPAC recommends these 3 supports for any reading or writing assessment, then that student cannot be considered for reclassification. So those contents, it's the content and language supports, that designated support, the designated support of extra time, and also the designated support of oral signed administration, which includes the text-to-speech in the online system. So if the LPAC, not the ARD, if the LPAC, based on the language proficiency, recommends the use of these designated supports, then that student cannot be considered for reclassification. If the ARD recommends based on a disability, that's a totally different situation. So we just wanted to point that out as a reminder. When you're considering reclassification, you have to look at these 3 specific designated supports and understand which committee recommended use on assessments. I think that's it. I know that this is kind of the end of our presentation, the student assessment part. And if you have any questions, We're just going to ask you to go ahead and send those to our assessment.specialpopulations email box. And that'll be it for today. Thank you so much.
All right.
I know we're switching people again.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Carly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And while they're just moving, one additional piece that I forgot to interject and add when it comes to your LPAC meetings, and as you're determining STAR and TELPAS participation, and as you're determining designated supports, particularly for STAR, keep in mind that those decisions should be made as close to the time of testing. However, likely you're doing those meetings now, and you should be, so that teachers are made aware, the students are using them within the classroom. And then, however, the LPAC may need to revisit those decisions close to the time of testing to make sure that they are still necessary and viable for those students. All right. Now, Monica, do you want to introduce yourself? I'll pull this up for you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Monica Brewer. I am the statewide coordinator for gifted and talented education. And I just want to, sorry, let me move over and I'll drive. So thank you for the opportunity to provide you with a little information and updates on gifted and talented education. The first thing I want to share is that the state plan for the education of gifted and talented students is currently being updated and revised. There is the current draft available on the TEA website under gifted education. Once you go to that webpage, you will see this image. Above that image is where you will find the draft and the link to the feedback. So the current draft is looking at changing from three columns, to two. We're doing standards of service. There are two standards: accountability and exemplary. And then we're adding a fidelity of implementation or fidelity of services. And then we'll be providing supplemental guidance documents as we go forward. The next thing I would like to share is the Texas Performance Standards Project. A lot of you have seen it. It is a free resource to all school districts, all teachers, all parents, all students in the state of Texas. And I'm not sure if it's linked. I'll get to it later. We are currently, every grade band, there are 4. We go K through 12. And the resources now, and I will show you when I get to the next slide with this, is currently some of our tasks have been translated into Spanish and are available for your use. So that is another tool for you. I'd like to tell you about our recent professional development opportunities. The latest 3 that have come out are our economically disadvantaged gifted and talented students presentation. These are all 6-hour updates. Overlooked and underserved, the gifted and talented English learner, and then the attending to the effect of social and emotional learning of gifted and talented students. All these are available through our GTESC leadership. All of your coordinators at your ESCs have these trainings and are available to provide these trainings. Next month, we'll be rolling out to our ESC leadership a new training on dual language and gifted and talented learners. If you are interested in that training or looking at wanting to co-partner with your ESC leadership on providing that training at your ESC level, please reach out to them or myself, and we can work out getting you to training or making that training available to you. I just wanted to update and remind everyone, these are the current trainings that are available also through our ESCs. All of our 30 hours are available, which are nature and needs, gifted and identification and assessment, models of differentiated instruction, and then creativity and critical thinking, engaging gifted students by adding depth and complexity. So those are our foundation courses. We do have an administrator and counselors training. Then we have our 6-hour updates other than the 3 I just mentioned. Raising expectations, which is our rigor training, twice exceptional students, creativity and innovation, and then implementing the Texas Performance Standards Project. And then we do have school board training available if you have school board trainer members who need training in gifted and talented education. Then I would like to remind you of the resources that are available out there or make you aware. For those who are looking to build a gifted and talented program or looking for more resources, the first link you will see is the Texas GT program implementation resource. Will provide you with all kinds of documents, tools, and resources to supplement your program. The next one is the Texas Performance Standards Project. Let's see if we can get there. And I want to show you our latest and greatest thing on our task. So when you go to our task and you go look, and you're looking for a task, scroll down. You will see now that there is a Spanish link on each tab. So if you click on a task, you will see the English version pop up, but if you would like the Spanish, just click toggle and you will have the Spanish edition of that task. We are working to update all of our tasks to this level, but currently there are enough out there in English and Spanish for you to use. So if I can figure out how to get back out of there. Sorry. No, escape is not working. Yeah, not on that. Sorry, technical issues. Too many screens working.
Oh, is it because?
Yeah.
Oh, here, hold on. Let me do this.
Okay, I did something to it.
Oh, no, bad, good.
Okay.
Now, where's your power?
Sorry.
There we go. Sorry about that, everyone. You duplicating.
I don't know. I think sometimes it goes to 10:30 or 11.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay. The other documents I want to resources is our GT Equity website that houses 3 of our resources: social, economic, and gifted and talented, English learners and gifted and talented, and our twice exceptional pages are available. Then we have our first toolkit, GT Toolkit, which is if you're looking for resources on for doing projects or research, you will find that there with, on Toolkit 1. Toolkit 2 is more of your secondary resources using depth and complexity and differentiated instruction to build out your core subject areas. And then the last one is the Studios, which is a sample of how a Region 1 program was developed and using the primary school grade program of IB, International Baccalaureate, and Gifted and Talented. This is my contact information. If you have any questions or concerns or want more information, or would like to provide feedback on the state plan, and I hope that you all go out and take a look at it to put in your input on making sure that we're serving all of our students. So gtad@tea.texas.gov or monica.brewer@tea.texas.gov. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Monica. So we're going to move on now to of course, our next agenda item, which is exceptions and waivers. This, as mentioned earlier, let me first close out of this. I think I can just do that as I fumble. Let's see. The E, thank you. Okay, so moving into exceptions and waivers updates. As I stated earlier, Roberto Manso is ill today, so I'll do a quick update. You will know that he's always available via email and telephone as well for your more specific questions. But the general information that we wanted to share was, first of all, to thank each and every one of you that went through the submission process this year for either a bilingual exception, an ESL waiver, or both. Thank you so much. We know that that's a task that's always a bit stressful in the fall, meeting the November 1st deadline. We're also very, very cognizant of the fact that this year, due to some of the changes and revisions to Chapter 89 rule text, some of you had to file for an ESL waiver or even a bilingual exception, either for the first time or for the first time in a while, or perhaps for more teachers than you've had to file for in the past. So we want to first and foremost thank you and acknowledge your efforts in that area. We do appreciate that very much. Roberto has received all of them and has been reviewing them very diligently. It's quite a few and it's quite a task. But very soon he will be we will begin to send out the letters with the approvals for your exception, waiver, or both. The key points that he wanted me to emphasize today with you is first that for many of you, everything was fine with your data as it was entered on the spreadsheet. But there are a few cases where some of you were either missing data on that spreadsheet for the exception or the waiver, or the data somehow doesn't match from one field to the next. And so Roberto will be contacting you on an individual basis, if this is the case with your data in your spreadsheets, to go over the inconsistencies or what appears to not be quite accurate, to clean that up with you and assist you in ensuring that the data that was submitted truly matches your staffing needs at your LEAs. So you'll be hearing from Roberto, like I said, on a one-on-one basis for that data cleanup as needed. Two other key items for us to just brush over today briefly. First of all, the 10%. The 10% of your bilingual education allotment funds that are required to be devoted to the delivery of targeted professional development in the form of a comprehensive professional development plan as per Texas Education Code 29, that's statute, as well as Chapter 89 Commissioner's Rules. As you'll recall, in the rules, the 10%, the guidance that we were providing at the beginning of this school year was that if you file for either a bilingual exception or an ESL waiver, one or the other, then 10% of the total cost, the total amount of your bilingual education allotment shall be devoted to professional development, targeting the needs of the teachers serving English learners in your district. As you'll recall, as per Chapter 89 rules that were adopted on July 15th of last summer, if you had submitted for both a bilingual exception and an ESL waiver in your LEA, you were originally required to actually devote 10% for each or 20% of your total bilingual education allotment to the professional development of the teachers in need. You, I believe, and I truly hope, have received the information based on the commissioner's input as well as input from all of you as far as this being a transitional year in this implementation of the 10% or 20% for both programs. We rescinded that, and for this year, the guidance is that a total of 10% of your total bilingual education allotment, and again, I say total allotment, not the 52% after admin costs are taken out, but the total 100% of the allotment, 10% of that is to be devoted to professional development targeted to the needs of the teachers serving English learners in your district, regardless of whether you filed only for a bilingual exception, only for an ESL waiver, or for both a bilingual exception and an ESL waiver. We wanted to make sure that everybody got that information, very key and important information. For this year, 10% of the total, regardless of whether you applied for both the exception and waiver or one or the other. The other piece that we want to remind you of is the comprehensive professional development plan. As you'll recall, with the adoption of the new rules in Chapter 89 Commissioner Rules last summer, we really spelled out more clearly what the professional development needs to look like in districts where you filed for an exception and or a waiver. And we defined quite clearly that the comprehensive professional development plan needs to be ongoing, sustained, and specifically targeting the needs of the teachers serving the English learners in your district, be it through ESL or bilingual education. So this is just a reminder by now, even though you haven't heard back yet with the final approval of your submission for a bilingual exception or an ESL waiver, you should already be implementing in full that ongoing targeted comprehensive professional development plan utilizing your bilingual education allotment funds. That remember that is a plan that spans the entire school year and is intended to build capacity in your district and to ensure that in the future you will not need to be filing as many or perhaps any bilingual exceptions or ESL waivers. So remember that comprehensive PD plan, that it's already being implemented. On a related note, you are already engaging in the recruiting plan that is required for districts who filed for an exception or a waiver. Remember that in order to staff appropriately, the professional development plan assists with retention and capacity building of existing staff, and then the recruiting plan is to expand the pool of teachers you're bringing into the district, and that is an important part of the requirements that you need to fulfill if you have filed for an exception or a waiver. So hopefully this was helpful information for you on exceptions and waivers. And again, we will, Roberto Manso is always available for your questions. He's happy to guide you through the process. He's very experienced in that. And he looks forward to also negotiating with many of you on your submissions. Yeah. Okay, great.
All right. Before we start on the pilot, I just want to show you on our website how to find some of those resources that Dr. Kennedy was just speaking about on our bilingual ESL webpage. I'm going to change this to see if we can. Okay, there it is. Okay. On our bilingual ESL webpage, under announcements, as Dr. Kennedy was talking about, the resource for the allowable use of the BEA funds for the Comprehensive Professional Development Plan. As you can see, that was updated and revised as of November 2018. So if you have not seen that updated with that clarification that Dr. Kennedy was referring to, that document's right here. Similarly, as Dr. Kennedy was talking about, if you have not yet seen it, this is a new resource that we've developed to assist especially superintendents, district leaders, in exactly what Dr. Kennedy was just talking about. How do I get myself to stop having to file bilingual exceptions and ESL waivers? So this is just an overview document to help to see how to build a bilingual or ESL program with some general planning focus and ideas here, and then also, just as Dr. Kennedy was mentioning, ideas for recruitment and retention of your bilingual and ESL educators that you currently have within your district. So that resource is there. Also, the third link here under announcements, our FAQ. If you've not taken a look, we had another update in December, the FAQ, which clarified updating some questions related to the comprehensive PD plan and the associated bilingual education allotment funds. That was updated in that rendition of that FAQ, and then also some new guidance with updated questions. We're constantly updating that about bi-monthly.
Yes, and Carly, maybe you want to click just in case, because last week we were at a director's meeting and we were a little bit surprised. There are still some leaders out there, some district leaders who have unfortunately not yet had the opportunity to view this FAQ, which is a living and growing and breathing document in direct response to the inquiries we received from you. So as you can see, it's laid out in a very, what we hope is a user-friendly, organizational structure with topics and quick links and hot links to different parts of the document so that you can go directly to the topics that you're interested in. It's constantly being built upon, and when changes occur, new dates are added to specific items. So we just want to make sure that you really, if you have a moment, that you go ahead and take a look through, because many of the questions we receive, even still, are actually answered quite clearly in the FAQ. And it's also very helpful to show it to others, whether it's teachers, principals, superintendents, right? When there's lack of clarity, you have in writing very concise responses to your questions. So,
and right here, as Dr. Kennedy mentioned, this is where you see what date it was added or updated in some cases with small or large clarifications, and then when it was new or updated as well. So you'll see that there.
And when we update that, just in case you're wondering, well, do I have to check all the time? That's one of the emails that you receive through your ESC contacts. You'll see just a quick email that says, hey, we've added new information to the FAQ. Take a look. So we do notify you. I know that you've probably received tens, dozens, perhaps hundreds of emails daily or weekly, and we understand that it's easy to overlook these. So we just want to build your awareness so that you are a little more aware when those emails come in.
Okay.
So our next topic, are we ready to move on? We are. Awesome. And I'm looking at the clock. We're doing good on our time. Our next topic is the pilot project and rubrics posting. I don't know about y'all, but we're super excited because the dual language immersion and sheltered, what is it again now?
Sheltered instruction in ESL.
Thank you. Sheltered instruction in ESL. We went through a number of different ways to title that. So at any rate, that those two projects that have are commissioners' initiatives and have been in the making basically since a year ago, September. So close to 18 months of work has gone into this. We're really excited that we've gotten to the point now where we are ready to post the draft versions of the implementation rubrics, which we'll talk about in a moment, as well as other resources for you. And we also will be kicking off our first series in our pilot project Zoom meetings with our 2 pilot project cohorts that we'll talk about in a moment as well tomorrow. So we're really, really excited. We're a bit exhausted, but super charged up and excited to be finally at the point that we've been working hard toward and that I know many of you across the state have been anxiously anticipating. So with no further ado, we're going to give you just a quick overview of this initiative and get you primed and excited so that when we post these resources, you'll have a good idea of what their purpose is and how to use them.
So overall, the purpose of this initiative, this commissioner's initiative, is to support all of our LEAs, our local education agencies, in effective implementation of program models that serve English learners. Particularly, and again, as Dr. Kennedy mentioned, the focus is on dual language immersion programs and sheltered instruction within English as a second language programs due to the commissioner's initiative. However, as we do talk about some of these resources, don't fear, we will also be working to add in those resources for transitional bilingual programs as well. We started with ESL and dual language because of Commissioner's initiative, but we'll be developing those resources as well for transitional.
Correct. And we're excited to have Amy Johnson with us to assist in that work. As she mentioned earlier in her brief self-introduction, Amy has experience both in transitional bilingual education and dual language education. So she's a fantastic addition to our team to assist in the development of those new tools and resources.
So it all began with the literature reviews. So the literature reviews have summarized best practices identified in the research. This is not TEA says or, we say specifically, but this is from national research, also looking at our Texas data as well, and how it coincides with that national research. So the literature reviews are what created the basis for all of the resources that we're developing. Also then from there, our program model implementation rubrics provide framework for self-evaluation for districts, campuses, and districts to do self-evaluation and guidance in identifying steps for improvement. If we're below compliance, how do we get into meeting basic compliance standards? How do we go beyond basic compliance standards and moving into higher forms of implementation in our programs? That is the purpose of the rubrics.
And one thing I just want to point out, it is a self-evaluation rubric. Self-evaluation, It is not designed for the TEA to come and tell you how you're doing, but rather that you, in your own individual campuses and districts, evaluate your own program model implementation, set your own goals for improvement, and act upon them.
Absolutely. And, you may even think of the use of these rubrics as a pre-activity to engaging in your yearly program evaluation of your bilingual or ESL programs. So these may be a helpful tool for you. They're not mandated to you, but hopefully useful for you. And then finally, further implementation tools and resources, which, as you'll see in our timeline, is really what we're developing throughout this school year and into the next, as we work with our pilot to find out what resources do you also need based on this rubric to help you in implementing and growing these programs. So we'll be continuously developing more tools and resources. So in the 2017-18 school year, we developed draft materials incorporating stakeholder feedback. Our ESCs were highly engaged in that process. This school year, we're piloting the rubrics through the voluntary pilot cohorts and developing aligned resources we're continuously developing. So as they will be posted, and we hope that by the end of next week, the literature reviews, the rubrics, and the associated scoring tools will be posted by the end of next week.
The draft.
And keep in mind, these are draft. The reason we say they're draft, although the pilot participants will be guided in their usage of these over the school year, when they're posted, it's for any LEA to utilize on their own, recognizing they're in draft form. Our pilot is helping us to refine them and ensure that they are appropriate during usage for campuses and districts. So as you see in this timeline, in the 2019-20 school year will be the full implementation of the finalized rubrics and associated resources. So we will be posting them for all to utilize, but just noting that they are in draft form and we hope to continuously improve them. We do welcome any feedback from the field and always to our English learner support at tea.texas.gov. You can always provide us with feedback, but we will be gaining that specifically through our pilot participants and continuously with our ESC contacts. So let's take a look at very briefly here. We just want to show you what the basic information within the rubrics are. The categories are titled the same between the ESL program model implementation rubric and the dual language immersion program model implementation rubrics. The categories themselves are these 5 categories: program model design, staffing and professional development, instructional design, lesson planning and curriculum, instructional design, methods and resources, and family and community engagement. As you can see here in the ESL program model implementation rubric outline, there are various components. Each category in both the ESL and dual language rubrics have about 5 to 7 components in each category as are broken down in that category. So you can see there. And then similarly, I'll pull up the same categories again for DLI or dual language immersion with the same categories. Many of the component titles are the same, but there are variances, obviously, due to the nature of the programs, and of course, the material is different as those differences between programs. You will also find some similarities between, and you'll see where the programs are congruent. Now, just want to briefly show you the features. I know you cannot read this, but this is a general mock-up of what a rubric looks like. This is an example of the ESL program model design category of the ESL rubric. But again, it's not intended for you to see the words here, but just to see the features. So you'll notice along the top there is quantifiable scoring so that you can actually score yourselves from 0 to 3 in each component of each category. You'll also notice that instead of, for instance, with ESL, ESL content-based, ESL pullout, it's not categorized as such, but a spectrum integration of those models. At times, you will see here that there are places where it mentions this particular component meets the basic requirements for ESL pullout. This over here meets the requirements for ESL content-based. Likewise, in the dual language immersion rubrics, you will find maybe some areas where it adds specific information to the differences between one-way and two-way program models, but it's all integrated instead of separated because the totality of the programs for ESL content-based and pullout, and then for dual language one-way and two-way are very much the same or similar, other than some particular components, and that's where you'll see differences.
And just to add on to that, as many of you are fully aware, you may implement both models, both ESL pullout and content-based, or both one-way and two-way dual language immersion within your district or even within a single school. You also might be working toward growing away from, for example, ESL pullout and toward content-based, or either away from one-way dual language immersion to two-way, or even just adding two-way in. So that's another reason why we wanted it to have this spectrum integration, to really have a seamless vision of what the program model implementation looks like, but with some nuances for the different specific models.
Absolutely. So also you'll notice in the first column, the below basic implementation, you'll notice just some basic information simplified. What do we do? Where does this go from there? So a very simple below basic, and then from there,
maybe we could just, I don't know if you mentioned, those are hot links. If we go back to, those are hot links in that gray field area, which is below basic. Meaning that there might be areas where you're not in full compliance yet. The hot links there go directly to, within the document, the sections of statute, but more particularly rule, so Chapter 89, that specifically describe what is required in order to be in compliance. So those hot links are very, very handy for you in that you click on those and it shoots you right on over to the specific rule text that you need to review in order to get yourself back into full compliance.
Right. And so across from level 0 to 3, you see here then a stronger emphasis on level 3. Generally speaking, you will find distinctions between level 2 and 3, whereas level 2 might be focused more so on an individual campus's effective implementation. And generally speaking, to move from level 2 to 3 would involve more district systemic implementation of those effective components, along with, the evidence of student outcomes. There should be evidence of student outcomes in level 2 as well of success, but even more so in level 3 in a district-wide capacity. So generally, those are the differences there. And then, of course, as Dr. Kennedy was just mentioning, throughout the document, there are references to research, and all of those references link back to they are associated with the literature reviews. That's where those come from. Within the electronic rubric document, There is at the end the whole list of all of our citations there that you can look at, all of those references to research. And then again, each of those links will link you down to the end of the document to where you can find exactly where that is in Chapter 89, Chapter 74.4, the ALPS. There are also a couple other hot links there for defining a few things, important information, terms, also linking to outside resources in a few instances. And at the end of the document, there are also some acronym glossary. So if there are any acronyms, instead of embedding what those mean all throughout the document, which would be very lengthy, there's a full list, a glossary of acronyms at the very end of the electronic document. All right, and again, we've already mentioned that there are 5 categories and then multiple components in each category. Finally, as you can see, just, yeah, go ahead.
Just building off of a question that came up last week at a director's meeting we were presenting this information at. As with pretty much all rubrics, but we want to make sure we make it very clear. When you, let's say that you're using the rubric and you begin by looking on the gray, the 0 column, the basic, below basic column, and you say, oh, we're in compliance, great. Then you would proceed to the basic or level 1 implementation. See if you have fulfilled all of the pieces that are listed in that column. If you are, you move to the second column and then on to the third. Basically, it builds on itself from one level to the next, and each level assumes that you have fulfilled all of the requirements that were described in the previous levels. So that's really an important piece to remember, that any level assumes that you have already fulfilled all the other requirements of the levels prior to it.
Yes, very good point. And on the rubrics, the electronic rubrics that will be posted, there will be an introduction page to all the rubric categories, which will have information like that, explain the purpose of the rubrics, how to use the rubric, and that visual of the components that we showed you. So there will be that introduction page, and that's a really important feature in how to utilize this document. Lastly, just want to show you a basic mock-up of what will be alongside the rubric, and that is a scoring tool for your usage that will coordinate with the categories and components of each category of the rubric, so that you can mark your score for each of those components, provide, as you can see here, this is a column for evidence, why you are saying that that's your level. Next steps. So for instance, if we're out of compliance, below basic, what do we need to do as of right now? What is immediate? And then those long-term goals. Likewise, each category will have then, as you total each category, you'll have, you can see then what would be some appropriate next steps to consider. These are not yet exhaustive lists. These are really just there to help you. We hope to further develop these next steps to consider throughout, particularly our pilot program.
Yes, and that's a really important point, because this is where, once the rubrics are actually being used in real world contexts, that feedback we get from our pilot project cohort participants on not just the next steps, which is super important, but also are the totals on the left here, are those totals appropriate to really gauge at these different levels of implementation. So where we already stated, and we hope we stated clearly, that all of these are draft versions, the rubric scoring tools are probably the most drafty out there, because we know that they are probably going to go through quite substantial revision as the rubrics are being test driven, so to speak.
Part of our pilot, for instance, is will be some site visits with our pilot participants, so that we can help to calibrate, if you will, the scoring tools to assist in that process of knowing that they're appropriately scoreable. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that's anything else to add about the pilot?
Nope, I think that's it.
All right. All right, so
I guess one thing we could say about the pilot, just because you might say, okay, we understand that the draft rubrics and other resources are going to be posted in the next week or so. The pilot is going to begin and commence right now and end in the late spring, full revisions in the summer. We anticipate the final versions of these documents for the beginning of the next school year.
Yes.
That's when we'll also be adding in all of the developing as we go resources to support implementation based on the rubrics.
All righty. So next on our agenda is the English Learner Reclassification rubrics. So more rubrics, but different rubrics. So now I'm going to take us to back to our TEA Bilingual and ESL Education Programs webpage. As of yesterday afternoon, these were posted there. So your ESCs have not yet received an email, but we will send out an email today announcing the posting of these resources so that they can disseminate that as well, especially for anyone who was not able to be here in our TETN today. So if you'll just follow me as I scroll down to documents. So under documents, I'm just showing you where to find this. You'll see, of course, our English Learner Reclassification criteria chart. And then from there, the first thing underneath there is actually the English Learner Reclassification rubric itself. And I'll just pop that open for you to just take a look and you can kind of see, okay, what that pops up. Right underneath that is the Introduction and Training PowerPoint. And so I'll pop this open because I'm going to utilize this to talk through some key points here in just a moment. But before I do, I want to show you that the third bullet here under the English Learner Reclassification criteria chart is the training video presentation. So when you open this, it will take you to a YouTube link where we go through and actually go through the PowerPoint to explain. So the PowerPoint alone is probably not as useful by itself. It will be important to take some time as district leaders, as teachers who will be utilizing the English Learner Reclassification rubric to watch this video. It is about 35 minutes. So
and just before we get into the content, just to remind everybody of the context of the English Learner Reclassification rubric. Just a reminder, I'm sure you remember, that the Texas ESSA State Plan, which was approved just about a year ago in March of 2018, in the Texas ESSA State Plan, Title III, Part A, it was required. So are we going to go through all that part? Okay, we're going to go through it. I wasn't sure how deeply we were going in.
Well, we don't want to take a lot of time today because the video is there for you. We don't want to repeat everything to you that's in this training video already. However, this part is very important. So you'll notice that, of course, the reasoning is mentioned within the training PowerPoint and within the video that because of the Texas ESSA State Plan, Title III, Part A, that we have now the standardized statewide program exit procedures, whereas before, the English Learner Reclassification rubric is making the subjective teacher evaluation more standardized. That was basically the directive from ESSA in our Title III Part A state plan. So whereas before teachers could utilize anecdotal notes, portfolios to participate as that subjective teacher evaluation portion of the English Learner Reclassification criteria, now it will be necessary for this school year, in the 2018-19 school year, for teachers to utilize the English Learner Reclassification rubric to fulfill the subjective teacher evaluation portion.
And just notice real quick that it's that in the plan was called the exit. It's the exit procedure and the student exit rubric. That was as per language through ESSA and through federal documents. But here in the state, as you're aware, we have really been distinguishing between exit and reclassification, which are explained right here on this slide, to make clear that the difference between reclassification, which is a change in an English learner's language proficiency status, and exit, which is departing from program services, and those two are not always one and the same.
Yes.
So we did rename the rubric to better match its purpose, which is reclassification, but not necessarily exit.
Absolutely. So you will notice that those terms are identified here, that in the SSA plan, when it says student exit rubric, it now is we're utilizing the term English learner reclassification rubric to better bring in that distinction between the differences of reclassification and exit. So again, I want to highlight here, as we just said orally, this is the reclassification criteria chart for this school year, as you're likely familiar. Keeping in mind that this subjective teacher evaluation is one component of the 4 components, and now the English learner reclassification rubric will be the method for the subjective teacher evaluation portion, okay? From there, we do show you a mock-up of what things will look like, again, because of the Texas SSA plan for Title III Part A, moving to a single statewide assessment for the 1920 school year, which Dr. Kennedy will give some more information about in just a moment. This is a draft mock-up of what the reclassification criteria chart will look like for next year, moving to that single statewide assessment as we utilize TELPAS for the English language proficiency assessment. And then again, continuing to use that English learner reclassification rubric. Just so you can understand, as you may have remembered from our previous information about Title III Part A, we were able to get an extension for that single statewide assessment for next school year. But the part that we will implement for this year, the 18-19 school year, is the English learner reclassification rubric for the subjective teacher evaluation. But thankfully, we had that extension to next year when it comes to moving to a single statewide assessment for both identification and for reclassification. All right, so then from here, the training will just take you through the development process, how the rubric was developed was stakeholder input, what were the guiding criteria or thought behind the nature of the document itself. From there, it goes into the actual usage. Who is the person to utilize? And I think I do want to mention this here, that the teacher to utilize this English learner reclassification rubric would be a certified bilingual or ESL teacher serving the English learner that is being discussed or evaluated within the rubric. However, if that teacher is under a bilingual education exception or ESL waiver, then it would be the teacher who is on the receiving end of that comprehensive PD plan that Dr. Kennedy mentioned earlier today. Now, for students, are we filling this out for every single English learner? No. The teachers, along with the LPAC, are going to consider which English learners are ready for reclassification and potential program exit, likely based on previous TELPAS scores and other data for the student. And again, as assessment division was talking about, these are those kiddos that you're already likely thinking would meet reclassification criteria, and you're not giving them designated supports on your STAR assessments, for instance. Those would be the students that you're filling this out for. And then from there, it just continues the process of how we're utilizing this. And again, the subjective teacher evaluation is one of the 4 components and should be utilized in a complete decision from the LPAC. A student, however, must meet all of the assessment criteria, the 3 assessment criteria for oral language, for the reading and writing components. They must meet that criteria in order to be considered for exit as well, or for reclassification. So keep that in mind. Just because the subject teacher evaluation says they're ready, they have to meet the other components. They must. So keeping that in mind. And so that training PowerPoint is there. And of course, if you have any further, yes.
Just scroll up for a moment. As we
Yes.
look at this, notice that there is room for comments. And at the bottom, there is a statement. You can't really see it, and it will be covered, of course, more in depth in the video and when you look at the PowerPoint. But basically, the teacher ultimately weighs in, is this student, does this student routinely demonstrate English language proficiency to the level where they can participate successfully in classrooms outside of English learner programming? And the teacher ultimately weighs in yes or no, signs their name, their signature, and the date. So that's just so that you can see there, all those pieces are there for that to be kept in the record of the student in question.
Absolutely. And I do hope that it's clear in the video, when you look at the rubric, making a clear distinction between second language acquisition support and just academic language development for any student. Because you'll notice in the rubric, this English learner reclassification rubric, that it talks about a student having no second language acquisition support, and recognizing that that should be consistent with, that doesn't mean that they would have no
support.
Traditional language, academic language support as any student at that grade level would have in attaining that academic language specific to the grade level and content area. You know, all of our students are English learners in the sense that they're all attaining the content language of the grade level and specific content area. And so we have to really make that distinction between the typical academic language support that any student at that grade level or content area would need versus specific targeted second language acquisition support. So it's explained in the video, but just wanted to highlight that there. And I think, do you want to address the Title III Part A?
Yeah, and so building right along with these new requirements under ESSA and the Title III Part A section of the Texas ESSA State Plan, we are fully aware of everyone's eager anticipation of the state's selection of a single statewide assessment, language proficiency assessment for the identification of English learners, and similarly, the assessment to be used for students who are not in STAR or EOC grades for reclassification, that academic achievement test for reclassification decisions. So those are two assessments that need to be selected by the state and to be utilized statewide beginning in the 2019 and 2020 school year. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that process, where we're at in the process, and what you can expect, as well as some guidance on how to manage this transition period, because we fully acknowledge that it is a big shift for all of us to move from many years of having a list of approved tests to select from for identification and reclassification of English learners, now to a single statewide, standardized statewide assessment. First and foremost, it's all part of the ESSA requirement for standardized practices statewide with regards to identification and reclassification of English learners. And so the selection of a single statewide assessment was recommended, or actually required, by the U.S. Department of Education to ensure that an English learner or a student in one city or region or area of Texas is assessed in the exact same way as they would if they were in another school or region in the state of Texas, and that they would be identified regardless of where they happened to be when they were assessed. And they, USDE did consider that a list of approved tests made us run in danger of not having consistency across the state. So there we have it. We're moving into this phase of the single statewide assessment. What we've been telling you so far is to make sure that you use up your current assessments this school year and that you not order ahead for next year. We're fully aware that you are right now very likely in the middle of your budget predictions and budgeting for next year. And we know that it is very difficult to budget for an assessment that we don't yet have identified. So I'm going to be straight with you there. We know it's a huge challenge. We want to, first of all, tell you, rest assured, the process is well underway for selecting the single statewide assessments for identification and reclassification for next year. And we anticipate that the test vendors and tests will be identified and selected later this spring in time for districts to purchase the assessments and for teachers and test administrators to be trained in the administration of those assessments. So how do we navigate this tricky time right now of trying to deplete our current tests, make sure we have the new ones purchased, everyone trained in time for the new school year? So the sort of central thing we're going to share first, the central idea is that under the language of the Texas as a state plan, the use of a single statewide assessment is effective for the 2019-2020 school year. We have received questions. What about students who are coming in the spring, for example, for a kindergarten or pre-kindergarten roundup? They're typically identified in the spring, not to be enrolled in schools until next fall. Which assessment do we use? How do we navigate? Similarly, over the summer, if some of you assess students who are new to your districts, going to be newly enrolled in the 2019-20 school year, you may be assessing them over the summer. Again, which assessments do we use? So the guidance that we're providing for this time, we want to be clear, but at the same time flexible. That's really important to us and to you. We want you to be able to use up your tests that you currently have and begin to use the new tests as they become available. So we're going to provide some flexibility that I'll explain right now. So for spring and for summer, you can do a couple of different things in assessing students for next year's enrollment. Now, I want to be clear, we're not talking about students who are coming in and enrolling, right? If they're coming in and enrolling right now and this whole spring while 2018-19 school year is going on, you just use your assessments that you have from the list of approved tests, okay? What we're going to talk about now are those students who are being assessed for this year prior to the first day of next school year, but for enrollment in next school year, pre-K, kinder, or possibly over the summer, new students that need to be assessed, okay? For these students, given the transition time, we recommend the following. You may do a couple of different things. First, continue to use up your current tests from the list of approved tests for 2018-2019 to depletion. You may use those tests up until, but not on, the first day of the new school year, okay? So let's see what that sounds like. If your new school year starts on July, let's just say July 24th. I don't even know if that's a school day. Don't count me on that. I'm just throwing a date out there. If your school year starts early, July 24th, you must begin to use the new statewide standardized assessment on that first school day and after, okay? You must. If your new school year has begun, you must use the new assessment, the single statewide assessment. If your first day of school doesn't commence until August, maybe August 10th, again, it might be a weekend, just giving it as an example, then for your particular LEA, you must, beginning that first day of school, begin to use the statewide assessment, okay? So we're trying to give flexibility depending on your first day of school, as we're marking that as the effective the 2019-2020 school year, okay? Now, you might wonder, what if we run out of tests in June? We want to test students in July, and school doesn't start for us until August. This is where our flexibility is coming in very clearly. You may, if you still have assessments over the summer and the first day of school for 2019 hasn't begun yet, you may continue to use assessments from this year's list of approved tests. If you run out in June and you have the new assessment in hand and you have your test administrators trained, then you may begin to use the new assessment over the summer in July or whenever, okay? Now remember, this is for students who are pre-enrolling for 2019, 2020, okay? Now, you're saying, woof, this is a lot of information, we need it in writing. I'm gonna tell you right now, you will receive it in writing. We're crafting it to send out to you, so do take your notes, but do also rest assured, you'll be getting this information in writing shortly. So scenario 1, deplete old tests anytime spring and summer up until but not including the first day of your individual LEA school year. On that first day of school, you must begin to use the new single statewide assessment. Now I'm going to say it's on or before the first day of that new school year, because if you run out of assessments or if you wish to begin to use the new assessment and you've been appropriately trained and your staff has as well in test administration, you may begin using it over the summer as well to identify these students for enrollment in the new school year, 1920. Okay, so I'm going to summarize the options for this flexibility during this transition period. Continue to use up your current tests from the list of approved tests, 2018-19 to depletion, up to but not including the first day of 1920 school year for your individual LEA. You must begin to use the new statewide assessment for the 2019 and 20 school year on the first day of school and thereafter. Okay, and those are the two main pieces of information to guide your work. We want to give that flexibility so you can hopefully deplete your old tests and begin to use your new tests with very little overage or leftovers. That remains now the question, what if we have tests left over? What if we have tests from the list of approved tests, 2018-19, the first day of school comes in 1920 for my LEA, I have these old tests, what do I do with them? Of course, these tests will no longer be valid, so you will need to dispose of these tests. We recommend shredding or some other type of safe disposal of the test that will no longer be approved for use in the state of Texas. We absolutely do not want you to retain those tests and use them for other purposes. We feel that that is just running the danger of mistakenly using those assessments when they are not going to be appropriately used. So please do stop using those assessments beginning the first day of the new school year, 1920, or earlier if you'd like, and dispose of, as in shred, those assessments as they are no longer valid and appropriate for use in the state of Texas. I'm sorry, what?
You want to mention about the budgeting?
Yeah. We've got two other things we're going to talk about to hopefully help you navigate as best you can this tricky transition period. One is regarding budgeting for next year, and the other is regarding documentation. So first of all, budgeting for next year. Given everything I've told you, what we really recommend you strongly to do is to budget at the high end, first of all. It's always better to be safe than sorry. We know right now that on the list of approved tests, the cost per student of the assessments on the list of approved tests varies. We have some that are quite inexpensive and to administer, and then we have other assessments on the current list of approved tests that are quite expensive per student, okay? So what you'll want to do is budget toward the more expensive side. Now, we're not saying it's going to be more expensive. We're saying it's always best to plan for the worst case scenario. Please hear me on that. We don't anticipate, we don't have the assessment selected yet, so we don't know the exact cost. I don't know about you, but in my household budget, I always try to plan for the worst case scenario so that I am prepared. So that's what we are asking you to do. Please budget for the numbers that you would normally budget for in terms of student counts. Perhaps pad it, especially if you are at the lower end, if you are currently using an assessment that is at the lower cost end, and plan for the worst case scenario, so that in the end you might actually have money left over. With that in mind, we do want to emphasize that given that we are we will be negotiating for a statewide assessment, we have a good leverage point to reduce the cost of any assessment that we end up selecting. Okay, so we will work very hard to negotiate a good low-cost option. As you may have last year participated in, at the end of last school year, we sent out a survey to many of you, well, all of you across the state, and we had almost 1,000 responses from you. This survey was to find out what it is that you think is most important about these assessments, a single statewide assessment for English learner identification and reclassification. And through that process, we heard from you a few things. We heard that you wanted flexibility in how the assessment would be administered. We heard that you wanted, for example, both paper-based options, if possible, and electronic or web-based options for test administration. So that is a key point in our search for the assessment. You also wanted some different packaging options for assessments so that if you are a tiny district, you don't have to buy large numbers of tests. So we are building that into our negotiations as well. So there are many, many aspects of the selection of the assessment. The third thing that really came out strongly in the survey that we sent out to you was that you all really value the accuracy and the usefulness of the assessment in truly reflecting the student's language proficiency as well as the student's skills in certain areas. In other words, the reports that would be helpful in designing instructional programs for the students. So all of that is, it's a big bill to try to fill all of those needs at a low cost, but we are doing our very best here at the state level to identify an assessment that will really, really meet the needs of everyone across the state in accordance with the input you provided through that survey last year. So budget a little high if you can, plan for the worst, we hope for the best. And we do understand it's a tough challenge for you. So we're hoping this guidance is at least of some help to you. On the other side, documentation. Because of this transition year, because these students will, some of these students will be identified prior to the beginning of the new school year using assessments from this year's list of approved tests, right? Like we talked about, up to but not up to and before the first day of the new school year. But then those students will enroll in the new school year. We are strongly recommending that you document this transition period and place language into the paperwork, the LPAC paperwork of those students, just explaining why, although they enter for 2019-20 school year, they were assessed on a test from the list of approved tests 2018-19. This is a precautionary measure that we are recommending in the case of an audit, whether it be a state or a USDE audit. We would hate for you to have findings that would make it look like a child was assessed in the 2019-20 school year, but not using the statewide assessment. This would not be a good finding. And in order to make it clear that that did not occur, we recommend that you insert language into your LPAC paperwork documenting this other process. You're saying, ooh, what would that language look like? When we send out our email with the information I've just shared, we will also send out recommended but not required language for you to include in your LPAC documentation. Okay? Again, the language we send out will not be required, but just simply recommended as a safeguard in case of audit to make it clear you were in full compliance in your use of assessments prior to the first day of school 2019-20. I believe that's everything. I know that's a lot. I promise you, you will be receiving in writing everything I just shared in a clear and concise manner so that you can digest it.
One thing to maybe add to ensure that you're budgeting appropriately is that keep in mind, we're only identifying English learners one time in Texas. So when we are utilizing the single statewide assessment for identification, we're only doing that for kiddos who are new to Texas public schools, either new from another state or another country. You remember Texas, we're like our own country. So we're not accepting from other states or other countries. So we're only identifying that student once. If they're coming from another Texas public school, we need to obtain that documentation from the prior school district. That can help from thinking that you need more assessments than you do.
Exactly. That will diminish reduce the number of assessments that you'll be purchasing. And it's just best practice as well. Great. Whew, thank you. With all of that, we are ready for Ricky Santayana to talk to us a bit about Title III Part A updates. I guess I'll just stay seated here.
All right. Okay, well, good morning. Good morning. So we're going to finish up here with some Title III updates. And so there are just some few things I just want to touch base on as far as where we are right now with our annual validations. The ESC validation, that has been completed. So ESCs, y'all should have received communication from me that that has been completed for the 17-18 school year. The LEA validation is actually about to begin. We have our random selection of LEAs, so notifications to the LEAs will be going out starting next week. And so for those districts who are independent, those emails will be going to your superintendents and CC'd, your Title III contact that's been designated by the ESC. And then also ESC individuals will also be part of that CC. For random selections of LEAs who are participating in a shared service arrangement, the emails will go to the physical agent, to the ESC. However, CC'd will be the LEA contacts. So it will be reversed depending on if you are an independent or if you are a member of a shared service arrangement. So just know that LEA validation emails will start going out next week. The next thing that I want to touch base on is that we have coming up in March, we have the ESSA Institute. This is for ESCs only, so but this is one of the opportunities that we are able to disseminate information to ESC staff, then can turn it around and provide it to the LEAs. That is March 25th and 26th. That's a Monday, Tuesday. We are still working with internal TA staff to determine which of those days will be actually designated for our division to share information. But just know, ESC staff, that this is one of the requirements of your basic service grant. So you can use your basic service funds to cover the costs of travel to be able to attend. And then, like I said, that's requirement number 8 in your grant. So just know that you want to make sure you put that in your calendar to be able to attend if you can. The next opportunity that's coming up that we definitely want to make sure you put on your calendar is our 2019 symposium. This information is just, there's more information to come, but just reserve these dates, July 22nd and 23rd. That is a Monday, Tuesday. This year, it will be actually hosted and located in San Antonio. So it will not be in Austin. So if you are booking travel when that flyer comes out, just remember that it is not at the Austin Convention Center this year. It will actually be in San Antonio. ESCs will get the flyers and it'll be disseminated out. It's actually still hosted and facilitated by the ESC2 Regional Center, who has been hosting in previous years. So they will update all the information and disseminate the flyers. And so that flyer will have your registration information, your hotel, and also have where you can submit for presentation proposals. So just know that that will be coming out in early February. The next thing I want to talk about is the Title III federal requirements. Just know that if you haven't had an opportunity to go to our TEA Title III webpage, please do so. And I can actually click there. So right here, you can see that if you haven't been on here in a while, there's actually some new links. We do try to provide and keep this updated with announcements resources as they come available. Here are a few things to just kind of point out. We do have an updated, as of January, the Title III allowable use of funds, FAQ. Just know that there's a new section in there that is related to engagement opportunities. That is the only new information right now, but that is a new section that will stay there and may be updated, but just know that that is what is new. The Family Engagement and Community Engagement Resource Tool, that is new. That is something that just rolled out beginning of December. ESC staff were trained in late November. That is to help assist in meeting one of the federal requirements. There are 3 components related to engagement that LEAs have to offer, and this started back in 17-18 school year with ESSA. So it says that LEAs shall offer engagement opportunities, activities for related to parent, family, and community. So those are 3 separate activities, and just to let you know, that is with conversation with USCE. We did go back and just make sure, this was last year, that we were like, is it to be interpreted that these are 3 separate engagement opportunities? And the response was yes. So we have moved forward with providing resource tools and training for all 3 components. Last year we did roll out some resources. There's a online module in Texas Gateway related to strengthening and increasing parental outreach. This year we rolled out resources, and there's still training being developed to focus on the family engagement and then also the community engagement. So just know that those are 2 separate, even though there are other titles that actually put those 2 together, family and community. But for Title III, we actually have those separated, okay? So there are some other resources here on the web page.
Maybe I just wanted to interject very briefly that if you haven't looked at the Family Engagement and Community Engagement Resource Tool right there, and if you have not contacted or been contacted by your ESCs, we strongly recommend, encourage, and just strongly urge you to avail yourself of this tool. This is a wonderful interactive tool. It really walks you through what the differences are between those 3 types of engagement required under Title III Part A ESSA. It gives examples, and then the tool itself is a comprehensive planning tool that is based on on needs and on data, that is based on past practices and their effectiveness, and it really helps plan for engagement activities in these 3 areas that will directly address the requirements of Title III, and will really make you completely in compliance, which is important. But more important than that, it will really, it is designed to increase the impact of your engagement activities on parent engagement and student English learner achievement. So I know how busy you all are, but this is a fantastic tool with many more resources to come. So please take a moment to look at that, to contact your ESCs about training.
Yes, and when you go here, there's also here on the right where you can actually click on the ESC, and this will take you to where you can actually, these are directly linked to the designated contact staff that provide training opportunities for bilingual ESL and Title III. So, so you can click here and it'll go to those individual pages. So if you are interested and say, yes, I want to get training on this, this would be great for our campus, our district, then that's how you're gonna be able to make that contact. So yes, please, there is 2 ways to get to this, through the Title III webpage that we just showed you. And then there's also, if you are one who has it saved in your favorites, you access a lot the EL portal, and see if I can get here.
I think it's there.
Right here. Yeah. So if you go here to this page, you can go to the Title III resources, and it actually will take you to that same page. Okay, so there's 2 ways to access this online web page for the support. So just know that ESC staff have been trained. and they are providing opportunities related to for parent, family, and community. Okay.
And this is a big priority of the Commissioner of Education. He is very interested in increasing parent, community, and family engagement for English learners. It's in fact one of his 2 initiatives in our division. The other one is, of course, the pilot project that we're about to implement. So this is an area of high importance to the Commissioner and high visibility. So we really encourage you to take a moment and to really utilize these tools and let us know their impact on your LEAs and most particularly on your families and students.
Yes. And so another piece, part of that initiative for the Commissioner is also to be able to get feedback, stakeholder feedback from parents of English learners and also LEA staff who provide services for our English learners. So starting this year, we are actually implementing an engagement advisory council that is statewide. There are 2 ways for that we're actually going to be conducting and gaining input. And like I said, the stakeholders are going to be the parents of English learners who are participating in programs, and then also the LEA staff who are providing services for them and who are also engaged in ongoing conversation, communication with the parents. Starting this year, there will be actually communication being disseminated through ESCs to LEAs that will be coming out probably most likely early next week. And as far as how we're going to develop and these advisory councils. So there are going to be 6 designated on-site focus meetings for parents. And these are hosted at 6 different ESCs across the state. And so these are going to be ESC 1, 4, 10, 13, 16, and 19. So we have already had communication with these ESCs, and they know that they will be hosting these. And this is just because we wanted to make sure that across the state, geographically, that we have a good representation of parents and then also for LEA staff. And the purpose of this is to be able to assist the state in providing support to LEAs and strengthening and increasing that engagement opportunities for parents and families of English learners as far as to benefit the education of their children. Okay, so we have many tools and resources that we are wanting to develop in the future that we feel are needed, but we definitely want to make sure that we are focusing and increasing and strengthening in the right areas that's going to benefit the families and parents of English learners. So just know that there is information that will be coming out as far as how the nominations are going to work to nominate parents, and then how the LEA staff will also be nominated to be able to participate. So LEA staff, there's not any on-site focus meetings for them. We are actually going to have the meetings through Zoom to be able to gain more an audience and be able to be more accessible through Zoom. And so just know that on-site focus meetings for parents and then Zoom meetings will be scheduled for LEA staff. The last thing that I have to kind of just touch base on is, professional development. Just know that TA is aiming to make professional development opportunities available via electronic access. We're trying to utilize Zoom as much as possible as we can. To also remember, we have our Texas Gateway. We have online modules. There's going to be a new one coming out this year for family engagement and community engagement. So that's another avenue to be able to get professional development. And then, of course, we have this web page here that we were addressing as far as the resource tool, which then ties you to being able to get also additional professional development from your ESCs. So please contact your bilingual ESC or ESL Title III ESC contacts for additional professional development opportunities, because we definitely want to make sure that if there's anything out there that we have provided training on that LEAs have access to, and if there's anything that we need to continually develop, please let us know. So that is what I have for Title III.
Thank you, Ricky. So now that is great news. We're very excited about these two big commissioners initiatives, the engagement initiative and then the program model implementation rubrics pilot initiative. The last thing we're going to do now is a couple of announcements. These are just quick announcements to let you kind of be aware of all the work that's going on, not just in English Learner Support Division, but also across the agency that impacts our work with English learners. And then we'll do a quick roll call and we'll be out. So announcements. There are a number of English Learner Support projects within our own team. We have some brand new grants that we are just beginning to kick off, and they focus on English learners with multiple needs. So in other words, English learners who are also gifted, also served through special education, also homeless, also migrant, also military, or any combination of those. And that particular initiative is going to really help us to develop more tools very specific to English learners identified also with special education needs. We're really excited yet again. I have to keep mentioning Amy Johnson because I think we forgot to mention in her introduction that she is not only certified and experienced in bilingual education, but also in special education. So she's going to be a great asset to us in this work as we work on supports for English learners with multiple needs. Another grant that we have that's just about to commence is in the area of ESL certification preparation course. We're going to be creating a statewide course to be utilized across the state to prepare teachers for the ESL certification exam. We know that will help build capacity across the state in an area that very much where we need it. We also increased our funds for bilingual teacher certification prep courses at the ESC level and are looking for other options to build capacity in that area. As far as how the English Learner Support Division is collaborating across the agency, already today you saw we had our guests from assessment and then also Monica Brewer from GT. But we're very involved in a number of projects in the curriculum and other area, in curriculum division and other areas of the agency. TEKS guides for the new TEKS in English language arts, et cetera, are being developed and we are infusing that with guidance and differentiation strategies for English learners. There is, in the curriculum division and special projects division, online materials that are being developed, and we are also working with them closely to ensure that they are accessible for English learners. The English Language Proficiency Standards, or ELPS, are at the very beginning of the provision process. We're involved with that. Certification standards for teacher certification in ESL and teacher certification in bilingual are up for full revision, and we are involved with that. Those two giant projects, and then finally PEAMS coding revisions. We have really worked hard this year to work with the PEAMS group to align PEAMS coding with actually what happens for English learners in the classroom. Program codes, parent permission codes, and all the rest. That's going to be an amazing, amazing thing when those are finally fully approved a little later this spring for implementation next year. So we'll have a lot more information on that and on all of these projects in the coming months. Whew. We were hoping that we might have question and answer time, but we do not. We regret that, but we do invite your questions, of course, to the English Learner Support box. We also want to make sure that you please provide us your feedback using the code. What is it called again? The QR code. Thank you. I'm trying to hurry. The QR code that is on your agenda. Please, that is a very quick survey. We very much value your feedback as to the content, the format, and everything else of our TETNs. So please, please, please take a moment to complete that. You have 3 more minutes before the official time to get out, so I'm going to let you start completing your feedback responses while we quickly take roll call for the ESCs. So ESC 1,
Hi, good morning. This is Karina Chapa, Region 1. We had 12 people present, 8 remote sites, and we are recording.
Thank you. Number 2.
Hi, this is Region 2. We had 2 in attendance.
Thank you. Were you recording?
Yes, we were.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Number 3.
Good morning. This is Lisa from Region 3. We have 13 remote viewers and 1 viewing of live.
Recording?
No.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Number 4.
Buenos dias. This is Itzi. We have 35 off-site, 24 in attendance, and we are recording.
Gracias. Number 5.
Good morning. This is Jennifer Smith, and we have 1 remote site, 26 in attendance, and we are not recording.
Thank you. Number 6.
Hi, hope you can hear us. We have 14 sites connected and 5 in attendance, and we are not recording.
Thank you. Number 7.
We have 4 in attendance and I believe 6 off-site.
Recording?
No.
Thank you. 8.
Good morning. There are 4 of us here, and we do have 2 remote sites, and we are recording.
Wonderful. Thank you. Number 9.
Good morning. We have 2 in attendance. We have 1 remote site, and we are not recording.
Many thanks. Number 10.
Good morning. We are 8 present on site and 35 remote sites, and we are recording.
Thank you. 11.
Hi, this is Gretchen. We have 14 in attendance, 37 remote sites, and we aren't recording because you are, and that we will access it that way.
You got it. Number 12.
We have 12 in attendance and we are recording.
Thanks. Number 13.
Buenos dias, this is Alicet. We had 8 in attendance. We are recording, and I will have to get back with you with the remote site numbers since I'm not having access to that right now.
Thank you. 14.
2 in attendance and 8 remote sites.
Recording? I'm going to guess no. Okay. Thank you. I guess if you don't say it, I'm just going to assume you're not recording, everybody. 15.
Good morning. This is Mary Casanuela. There are 2 in attendance, 0 remote sites, and we are recording.
Thank you. Number 16.
Good morning, everyone. We have 4 in attendance, 3 remote sites, and we are recording.
Wonderful. Number 17.
Good morning. We have 9 in attendance, 3 remote sites, and we are recording.
Was that 9 in attendance, 5 remote, and you are recording?
9 in attendance, 3 remote, and yes, we're recording.
3, sorry, it's really hard to hear. I heard 3 remote. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you much. Thank you. 18. Anyone from 18 here? We'll go on to 19. 18 can chime in if they're here and having trouble, or email us. 19.
Good morning. Here at Region 19, we have 29 present, 2 remote sites, and we are recording.
Thank you. And 20.
Good morning. This is Region 20. We have 5 remote sites, 19 in attendance, and we are recording.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. We do appreciate each and every one of you at the ESCs and out in the LEAs. We also look forward to seeing your feedback on the using the QR code, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you so much, and have a good rest of your day and week.
Good morning. I'll send an email.
Who's going to contact them? The QR code was citizens.